This is Busted Open Radio's Dave LaGreca. Dave, please tell me about this conversation you had with Henry Winkler about the one and only.
Well, I'm sure you would understand that most people, when they meet Henry Winkler, they bring up Happy Days.
Hey.
But I didn't. I brought up the one and only, and I said how I do a wrestling show, and he's like, "Oh yeah, and he told me about the whole Gorgeous George and everything else like that, and he really took the time out to talk to me because I'm sure there's probably hasn't been anyone since that movie was released that anyone has brought that movie up to him at all. So
Wow. So did he just find it interesting, or is he like a wrestling fan? What was your take on him?
No, I think like there was a lot of people around. It was he was a guest on Sirius XM, and he wasn't a guest for Busted Open, but he was like walking in the hallway.
Sure.
And I was being introduced to him, and I said, of course I know Henry Winkler. He was in One and Only, and it stopped him in his tracks. And he actually took me aside and had a conversation about the movie with me. So,
oh, that is so cool. It's free on YouTube if anybody wants to watch it, by the way.
Is it really?
The whole thing, the original release, you don't have to pay for it. You can just go watch it.
Oh, well, you know what? I'm writing that down right now because as soon as I am done with this interview, I'm going to YouTube and I'm watching this movie. I haven't watched that movie, I'm going to guess, since I was probably in the 6th or 7th grade.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I'm going to blow your mind here, Dave. I have not actually watched the movie yet. I'm like nervous to watch the movie because I've heard it's not a fantastic movie, and I love the poster, and I just kind of want to pretend. I don't know. I haven't dived. You suggest it though? You think I should watch it?
I mean, again, I haven't watched it since I was in the 6th or 7th grade. Okay. I liked it then. Another movie that people sleep on, a wrestling movie with Peter Falk, of Columbo fame, All the Marbles, where he's a tag team manager, which I think you would like. Actually, that is a good movie. So.
Okay.
I'm suggesting that right now.
Okay, great, wonderful. And maybe we should do like a watch along at some point. We can watch the one and only together. That'd be fun.
I would like that. And All the Marbles is available on Amazon Prime. So
okay,
we could do a double feature.
Oh, wow, yeah, at the movies. We could do we pull Justin LaBar in. You just see with just us in our heads, kind of Mystery Science Theater kind of.
I talk to Justin LaBar enough on Fridays. How about you and I just do it, just the two of us? How about that?
You like him? He's a pretty unlikable guy.
I love Justin. Justin's great. He's a good dude.
Oh, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I get right. I guess.
Yeah, I love Justin.
All right. Well,
I mean, he has a poor taste in football teams, but other than that, like, I'm a big fan.
He's got nice suits. He dresses nice. I'll say that much.
Not when he comes on our show.
Well, brought him a little bit. I know he's got stuff. He brags about it. Oh, I go suit shopping with Titus O'Neil. Oh,
it must be nice. It must be nice.
The good life. Just
yes.
So anyway, all right. Well, Dave, Busted Open Radio. You guys make news all the time. You talk. Your whole life is pro wrestling. You talk wrestling all the time. Last night was the Wednesday Night War, so I consulted with the team. We have some questions here. One of the things that people wanted to hear you chat about was on the Busted Open recently. Bully Ray said that AEW has glaring issues that NXT doesn't. Do you agree with that? Do you think that that's the case?
It's funny. We were talking about that on the show today, and you know this because Busted Open is 3 hours long.
Yes.
So and a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it too. You grab the headline, you grab one quote from the show, but that's like one quote or one sentence in a span of 3 hours. So Bully is a big fan of AEW, and he even said it. He loves like 9 out of 10 things on the show. But when we do the show on Wednesdays, obviously you fall into the trap of comparing NXT and AEW because they're both on Wednesday nights and they're both on at the same time.
Right.
So the one thing that he feels like NXT has a hand up on is the in-ring work. Technically, the in-ring work he likes better than the in-ring work with AEW. AEW feels like in a lot of ways, and maybe even with the officiating, they could tighten the screws a little bit more with some of the ring psychology.
It sounds like you agree with, it sounds like the way you're talking about it, you agree with some of these points.
So in certain cases.
Okay.
And I get labeled as a AEW mark and a WWE hater. Again, because people, especially right now, Nick, they love to grab a hold of certain things, and they love this division, and you're either on one side or the other. I come from a time when, as a wrestling fan, especially when I was younger during the territory days, where I watched everything. I liked everything.
Yeah.
And I like everything now. Maybe not so much on Monday nights, but for the most part, I like everything that's going on right now. And if I'm not a big fan of Monday Night Raw, but I love NXT and I love SmackDown and I love 205 Live and I love the original documentaries done on the network, how am I a WWE hater? It sounds preposterous. But you know what? I'm an AEW fan. If I had to pick one show of the week that I prefer over others, it's probably AEW Dynamite.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. Where Bully would probably go with NXT.
Because they're really different. And I know you say people kind of pick their different camps, which is true. You know, tribalism is common in everything, I feel like, these days. But the NXT and AEW products are really different, in my opinion, especially now. Like, what is it about AEW that you enjoy so much that makes it your A show for the week?
Yeah, and let me say this too. If I had to pick a second show, it would be NXT, and they just happen to be going head to head.
I think you're wrong, Dave. I want to jump in, but the A show each week is SmackDown. There's nothing better than heel Roman Reigns right now. Then you can kind of pick AEW and NXT. That's fine.
All right. I would give a close third with SmackDown, Nick.
What?
But can we agree that the best story going right now is the Roman Reigns story?
Yeah,
I mean, we can agree on that, right?
And that's the whole show. But even Apollo Crews is getting roped into the Roman Reigns show over on.
Which is, by the way, and I know we're kind of jumping around here, Nick. Yeah. How about how, like, on Monday Night Raw, they could never do anything with Apollo Crews. Like, they can never get you to buy in emotionally. All it took on SmackDown was for him to be sitting on a sofa next to Roman Reigns for 30 seconds, and instantly you're invested in Apollo Crews. It's amazing.
Yeah, because I think what it is like Apollo is just like this bubblegum baby face a lot of the time. He just comes out, smiles, doesn't do a lot of talking, either wins or loses, but he puts up the good fight. You see him with Roman and you're like, oh, because like Roman has changed so much from where he was. He was kind of a bubblegum baby face like Apollo. And I think that's where the wheels moving, just even seeing them next together, you can kind of start to fill in the blanks a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I agree with you with SmackDown as far as being such a great show. That's why, like, even during this pandemic, we have so much great wrestling to watch. It's hard to really be negative right now when you have, NXT, AEW, SmackDown, even MLW since they've restarted, I think has been very good. Like, there's so much really good wrestling, and just coming off the heels of Wrestle Kingdom, like, there's so much great wrestling right now. It's kind of hard to be negative. And the other thing too is all these companies are trying their best to put on a good product during a very, very tough time.
Yeah.
But to go back to your original question, as far as like AEW with Bully, like, Bully really enjoys the show. He just wishes that maybe with certain matches, and I can understand where he's coming from, a little bit more ring psychology, in certain matches, in certain areas. But at the same time, I think that when you look at pro wrestling right now, they give you a variety. Yeah. Like, some matches are going to be slow. Some matches are going to be telling you a story. And some matches are just going to be pure athleticism. And I think that's one of the things that I love about wrestling right now, is that you can have a variety of wrestling. And AEW's only been around a short time. Think about it. The show's only been on for a little over a year. I think it's been successful. And I think they're still trying to find their way as far as what their audience and who their audience is and what they prefer. But they have tapped into a very young audience, which is an audience that hasn't been around pro wrestling, like that 18 to 35-year-old. And I think that's the audience of AEW right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that's been the argument here for a lot of people, with AEW and NXT, is that, as great as NXT may be, and especially since Sting came back, I think NXT has kind of turned, the volume up a little bit over there to try to compete. But over at AEW, I mean, there's still holes there. I mean, do you wish they still, work with their women a little bit more? I mean, are there things you think that you'd like to see them improve upon over at AEW?
I think they are with what they're doing as far as the relationship with the NWA, and now that they're having this relationship with Impact Wrestling.
Sure.
I think that is the biggest advantage they're going to have, having those relationships, is bolstering up that women's division. I mean, first of all, they do have star. I mean, Britt Baker's a star, like that's for sure. And then like they really found gold with Thunder Rosa. I mean, I'm so looking forward to this matchup, with Beach Bash with Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa.
Sure.
And then now you bring in Impact, and they have talent, Tasha Steelz and Kiera Hogan and Deonna Purrazzo. If they can bring that into the world of AEW Dynamite, I mean, I think that's such a big win for their women's division.
So you sound like you're kind of enjoying the multi promotions coming together at AEW, because like I do wonder sometimes when I see like this stuff going on with Bullet Club and the Elite, and it's like you gotta kind of know what's going on. Like I don't know that you can be a casual fan and like turn on some of this stuff with like Omega and Callis, all that, and immediately kind of get it if that resonates with you.
And I think, Nick, right now in the world of pro wrestling, and you notice it's very circular, like it goes through cycles.
Yeah.
I think 2019 was such a big year for pro wrestling. And I think that it was one of my favorite years as a pro wrestling fan, 2019, when you look at how they were able to expand and get a lot of mainstream exposure. I think right now, maybe it's because of the pandemic, it seems like we're kind of dealing with just a hardcore pro wrestling fan right now. I don't know how much they're tapping into the mainstream audience. They're trying. I just think that like right now, and even with certain fans, it's hard for them to watch without the crowds and things like that.
I mean, we had Undertaker come out on Joe Rogan's podcast yesterday and said, "I don't watch this product. I find it to be soft." I thought that was an exceptionally telling comment.
Strong words. I mean, definitely some strong words. And
yeah,
soft. Wow. I mean, that hits home. That's a strong word to use, because in some ways I understand where he's coming from, but in some ways it's kind of unfair as well, because man, all these wrestlers, especially right now when there's not a crowd to feed off of, they're busting their asses, man. They're really put on. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in the ring knowing for decades upon decades upon decades you feed off the energy of the crowd, and now that element is gone. I mean, that's got to be extremely difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was surprised to hear him say it. I was like, man, that's really a strong statement there, because I was talking with actually LeBar about this a little earlier, but like he went out of his way to praise Triple H, but like doesn't praise Vince. And it's very rare you see those glimpses where you see like any daylight between Undertaker and Vince. This is honestly like the first time I think I can ever think of seeing daylight between these two guys,
Well, I mean, you mentioned NXT. I mean, there is definitely like a complete there. You talk about the differences with NXT and AEW, which I agree with. NXT is the more pure pro wrestling show, where AEW is more of a show. Like it's constant action. It's hard to turn AEW Dynamite off. Once you start watching, I mean, they keep you invested. And NXT, pure, a little bit old school pro wrestling product. But you look at the difference between NXT and Raw. I mean, that is completely different. But yet NXT is where you start before you go to Monday Night Raw. So you would think there would be a little bit of a synergy between the two shows, and I just don't see it right now.
Nobody does, Dave. It's the $10,000 question. Why did Vince McMahon give up on NXT? And a part of it is like, I understand that the pandemic is going on right now, and you don't want to blend as many people as you can. It's here and there. So I get that side of it. But, again, you go back just a little over a year ago from where we're at now, you had NXT and Survivor Series.
Yep.
It looked like a big deal. We were kind of hopeful we would see, a 10-10-10 in the Rumble that year. That didn't happen. And now they're back to kind of where they were before Survivor Series. They're just the third to the point where Vince can take these guys, put them under masks, and call them completely new characters in a stable, and it doesn't even faze him.
And and we've seen that happen, and the fans aren't buying it. We know who they are. We've we just saw them on Wednesday, and now next Monday you're going to tell us that, erase your memory. That's not like, you can't do that. And it's on USA. Like, if we were having this discussion and they were still on 1 hour on the WWE network, but they're on the same channel
Right.
at the same time
That's a great point.
as Monday Night Raw, it's ridiculous if you think about it.
It's a really good. I hadn't even thought about the fact that they were both on the exact same platform, so that like you're telling the USA executives like, thank you for the 2 hours on Wednesday nights, but just not even we think people are watching this.
Like,
We're gonna rebrand them over on Raw.
And that's where, and I wish I didn't have to say this, but I believe that it's true.
Sure.
We talked about it on Busted Open. It feels like to me, and Bully has mentioned this as well, that them putting that show on USA at 8 p.m. was a defensive move against AEW. Kind of a way to stop that momentum and to make sure that they could get to a certain place, but not any further, because there's another wrestling show, which is a WWE show, on at the same time. And I feel that that's true, because you're not investing a lot. And then also too, like a Keith Lee, he's a champion. He's got momentum. There's a buzz about him. You bring him over to Monday Night Raw, first pay-per-view match, he's beating Randy Orton. So you're like, they're putting a rocket on this guy's back. This is the next big star. And then a loss, a count out, a loss, like, what? Then why did you put him in that position to begin with? It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it is. Well, and it's interesting too, because last night on NXT they did the Fight Pit too, which is like you talk about how it's a more pure wrestling thing. I thought that was they bend it sometimes. I thought that was really inventive, especially kind of how they blended the scaffold match, cage match stuff. But
yeah.
Ciampa lost by submission. I mean, two-part here. What do you think about it? Where do you think they go with Ciampa here? Do you think that now he's going to make the leap, possibly show up in the Rumble or something like that?
And see, that's the problem with NXT. Rhea Ripley loses. All right, we're going to see her at the Rumble, and she's going to be either on Raw or SmackDown.
Right.
Ciampa loses this match to Thatcher. He must be moving on to the main roster.
Riddle lost the Fight Pit match
and then he moved on.
Then he moved up, yeah.
And don't even get me started with Riddle, please. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I want to pull the string now or not. I mean, is it just you don't get it? Like, what is it? Why?
It's a combination of maybe it makes me think I don't get it. Like, there's an audience out there that does get it, but I'm not in on the joke. Like, is there people out there that find that funny and find that interesting? Like, somebody who's so talented in the ring, somebody that we saw on NXT really dominate, but now it's more about how he kicks his sandals off his feet and his flip-flops and the stoner jokes. Like, really? And these stoner jokes are something from Fast Times at Ridgemont High from 29 years ago. Like, do I not get it, or am I missing something? Like, I feel like I'm not in on the joke.
No, I'm with you. I think a lot of people are. But a conversation for another day. Anyway, back to Ciampa though. Like, would you like? I mean, it sounds like you're trepidatious about any NXT talent that kind of floats up to Raw. I mean, Ciampa has been Teflon bulletproof. I mean, it would be great to see him work with an Orton or a Reigns or something like that. I mean, do you think that's maybe where we're headed now, or no?
I mean, it might be, or maybe this is going to continue this story. Like, hey, maybe Ciampa bit off a little bit more than he could chew by being in the Fight Pit. Maybe this is a continuation of a story on NXT. But you mentioned like a Randy Orton. Obviously, you put him in the ring with a Randy Orton or an AJ Styles. That's something that could definitely work. But what you just said, there is that fear, right? There is the fear of, like, Bobby Roode, such a great heel wrestler, like that whole persona that he had. And then he moves over to the main roster, and it's really just about his entrance theme, and why couldn't they tap into those things? So there is always kind of a fear when an NXT wrestler moves over to the main roster.
For sure. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, just kind of news of the day that just came up. I was really surprised to see this news. Chad Gable was on the bump, I guess, earlier today, And I don't know if you heard this or not, but he said Jason Jordan is working towards an in-ring return, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that would be great. I mean, that creates a buzz. I think, Jason Jordan with the whole storyline with Kurt Angle and stuff, like I'm guessing now that's in the rear view mirror. And if you could put those two together again, I think it would really build both up, because Gable's another one that we can go and say, like, what went wrong? Why did they go that route? Why did they change the character, the personality? I think if you could put those two together, and if there is an in-ring return for Jordan, I think that's something a lot of fans would be. I know I would be excited about that.
Do you reference how he's the son of Kurt Angle? Do you keep that going?
I wouldn't. Think about it. In the world of the WWE, they change stories like at the drop of a dime. Like, they think, really, I honestly think Vince McMahon thinks we have memories like flies. Like, I think that he really thinks that, like, once the show is over, we don't think about it again until, but that's, wrestling fans are the opposite of that. Like, we dissect and think about everything. We talk about it. But I really don't feel like they think of the fans in that way.
Yeah. Well, last thing I wanted to ask you, what was it like to be ringside for the War of Worlds between Ryback and Mark Henry? Was that?
I'm blocked. Ryback blocked me, so I can't read his tweets anymore.
That got hot, man. I've seen Mark unhappy before, and it's not a fun space to be in. Like, I don't know why you would go and poke the bear like that.
Yeah. Listen, I don't know Ryback personally. Obviously, people say things, but unless I get to interact with the person, I only met him once, interviewed him once, and that was before WrestleMania 29 years ago.
Oh.
But I do know Mark, and I will say this with my last breath: Mark is probably one of the most genuine, just most honest, loyal people I have ever met. Like, seriously, I'm not even just talking in the pro wrestling business, but just as a man, he's a great person and a great man. And I'm lucky that I work with a lot of good people, with Bully and Tommy as well. But Mark is that genuine good person. So, things that get heated, I think, with Mark is that, like, why are you saying the things about the business? Like, the business gave you your name, the business gave you the notoriety. Maybe things didn't work out the way you wanted to, but, like, it's wrestling fans who follow you on social media, and, like, to say the things, the F word, there's certain terminology and statements that you don't make, when it comes to our world. And Ryback went there, and Mark took exception. And I think Ryback kind of doubled down on some of those comments as well. And it got heated. And, I never like to see any kind of conflict in our community, because, we're strength in numbers. We got to build each other up and not knock each other down. But there's no, again, I don't know him, but I know Mark, and Mark takes everything very seriously, as far as, like, hey, man, he's a Hall of Famer, and he, our world deserves to be talked about in high regard. When somebody inside the community is trying to tear it down, the people are going to have issues with that.
I believe the quote from Mark was, "I will rip the flesh from your bone." And in that moment, I was all putty. What a scary, I was like, and we've peaked. So you're always in the middle of everything, Dave, right? Like, you guys make so much news over there. And again, you say you got 3 hours to fill every day, man. It's like, some stuff's just going to slip out, I guess. So,
well, I don't even know about slipping out. I think it's that in our world, there's a lot to talk. There's a lot from, like, Wrestling Inc. I mean, you guys do a phenomenal job with the stories, and a lot of, I read the sites. Of course, I believe, and I learned this from Jim Ross, and I probably told you this before, Nick, and I know, you're a young guy, but you also have an old school way about you as well.
I'm 35. And, I'm at the crossroads of young and old school. So
listen, when you're 49, 35 is young. Okay,
got it.
You give that tip of the cap to the past. You respect the past. I've seen you interact with a Bill Apter, so you understand the world and respect that world. Jim Ross told me, again, strength in numbers. Like, one thing that I try to do, and again, like, having your world a part of my world as well. I want to strengthen the whole community. Like, there's no reason for us to fight. I want Jim Ross's podcast to do well. I want you, Nick, you to do well in this community. I want AEW and WWE to do well. I want us all to do well, because the healthier this business is, the better it is for all of us as individuals. So I will never, at least for me, I will never try to tear anybody or anything down, because we really need each other, especially right now.
Amen. And that is a great place to put a button in it for right now, Dave.
That's it.
As you send positivity out of the world, I told you we were going to go 20, we went 30, man. So, we're done.
I'm sorry. I'm a little long-winded, Nick.
No.
I apologize.
No, we were riffing here today. We hit all the points I wanted to go over, so it doesn't matter. We did the interview. I mean, I don't know if you could do an interview correctly, but I feel like we did a correct interview here today.
Okay, all right.
It was good. Except
you're the man. I'm just following your lead, pal.
You're great, Dave. Where can we send people to find you, follow you, support you, all those good things?
Well, you can listen to Busted Open on Sirius XM Monday through Saturday from 9 to noon with myself, Bully Ray, Tommy Dreamer, Mark Henry, Ryan McKinnell. That's on Sirius XM. Also, we have the Busted Open podcast, which is a 45-minute version of our daily show, and that's available wherever you can listen to podcasts. Also, you can find me on YouTube. I do a show with my brother Don called It's a LaGreca Show, and you can follow me on social media at David LaGreca1. So there's a lot there.